My name is Clara, and I'll never forget the night that changed everything. The night my family decided that I wasn't worth their time. The night they showed me exactly how little I mattered to them. And the night I found the key that turned their betrayal into my power. For as long as I can remember, I was the invisible one in my family, the youngest daughter in a house where achievements were measured only when my siblings claimed them. My older brother, Daniel, was the golden child, captain of the football team, straight into business school, groomed to follow in my father's footsteps. My sister, Amelia, was the dazzling one, always dressed perfectly, always in the spotlight, the kind of girl people noticed the moment she walked into a room. And then there was me, Clara, the quiet one, the one who stayed up late with books while my family went to parties, the one who aced exams, but got nothing more than a distracted, "Good job, honey," while my brother got trophies, and my sister got flowers. I told myself it didn't matter, that someday, somehow, I'd make them see me. And that day finally came. I had been working for months on a research project, pouring every ounce of myself into it. It was grueling, exhausting, but when I got the letter that I'd won the National Academic Excellence Award, I cried, not just because it was recognition, but because I thought, this is it. They can't ignore me this time. The award ceremony was the biggest night of my life. My professors were going to be there, my classmates, important people in the academic community. I bought a dress with money I'd saved from my part-time job. A simple black dress that made me feel, for once, like I belonged in the spotlight. I called my parents, my brother, my sister. I told them the date. I begged them to come. It would mean the world to me, I said, and they promised. But promises in my family were fragile things. The night came. I stood backstage, clutching my speech, my heart racing. When they called my name, when the applause thundered, I walked out smiling through tears. The auditorium was packed, and for a moment, I felt like everything I had endured, the loneliness, the dismissal, the years of being invisible, had been worth it. I looked into the audience, searching for the faces I loved, searching for my family, but they weren't there. Row after row, seat after seat, strangers cheered for me. Strangers clapped until their palms stung. But my mother's proud tears weren't there. My father's approving nod wasn't there. My brother's smirk, my sister's laughter, gone. I delivered my speech with a voice that only cracked once. But inside, I was breaking. When the ceremony ended and the lights dimmed, I checked my phone. No messages. No apologies, just silence. Later, I found out why. My family had gone to Daniel's networking dinner. Amelia had posted pictures of herself at some party downtown. My parents had smiled in the background of those photos, glasses of champagne in their hands. They had chosen, and it wasn't me. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, the award gleaming coldly on the table in front of me. It felt like a cruel joke. The proof that I had achieved something great, but no one who mattered to me cared enough to see it. I was crying when I noticed it. The old tarnished key. It had fallen from a small envelope that had been tucked into the bouquet of flowers the university had given me. I didn't remember opening the envelope, but there it was. An old brass key with a note that simply said, "For when you're ready to see the truth." At first, I thought it was some kind of mistake, a prank maybe, but as I turned the key over in my hands, something inside me shifted. This wasn't just a key, it was a message, a doorway to something I didn't yet understand. And if my family thought they could ignore me, if they thought they could dismiss me forever, they were wrong, because that key was the beginning of everything, the beginning of the revenge they never saw coming. I couldn't sleep that night. The award sat on my desk, catching the faint glow of the streetlight filtering through my curtains. It should have been the happiest moment of my life, but every time I looked at it, all I could see was the row of empty seats, and then, beside it, the key. Small tarnished brass, rough around the edges, but heavier than it looked. The tiny note still lay folded under it. For when you're ready to see the truth. The truth. The words stuck in my head as if they had been carved there. Who had written the note? Who left me the key? And what truth was I supposed to see? I kept rolling the key between my fingers, and something about it seemed familiar. The grooves, the way the metal was slightly bent near the top. Then it hit me. It looked like the old keys my father used to carry for his office. When I was younger, I remembered playing with the ring of keys he'd sometimes forget to take off the counter when he came home. He always scolded me for touching them, said they weren't toys. But this one looked just like one of his. I tucked it into my pocket, deciding that I'd figure it out later. I needed sleep, though it never really came. The next morning, I went to my parents' house. I hadn't been there in weeks, not since the fights had gotten so bad that even small conversations turned into screaming matches. But something inside me told me the key belonged there. When I arrived, the house was quiet. My parents weren't home, but I knew where my father kept his things. I slipped upstairs to his study. It felt almost criminal, sneaking through the house like that, but my anger gave me courage. I tried the key on one of the desk drawers. Nothing. On the small filing cabinet. Still nothing. Then my eyes drifted to the cabinet in the corner, the one he always locked when company came over. My siblings and I used to joke about it when we were younger, saying it was his treasure chest. My hands trembled as I slid the key into the lock. It fit. With a soft click, the cabinet opened. Inside were folders, dozens of them, old, dusty, but neatly labeled. At first, they looked like nothing, just boring files, maybe work documents. But then I saw the names, my family's names, mine, my brothers, my sisters, my mother's, and accounts, bank statements, letters, legal documents, things that didn't make sense, all jumbled together. I pulled out the folder with my name on it, my heart pounding in my ears. Inside, I found something that made my stomach turn. Scholarship papers, letters from universities I had never seen. Apparently, I had been offered multiple scholarships years ago, opportunities I never even knew about. And at the bottom, rejection letters, all signed, not by me, but by my father. He had declined them, without telling me, without ever giving me the chance. I sat there frozen, staring at the pages, my chest tightening. He hadn't wanted me to go. He had sabotaged me. And when I pulled out the other folders, it got worse. My brother's folder was filled with glowing recommendations, checks, and transfers. Proof of how much money they'd poured into him. My sister's was the same, but mine was a graveyard of lost chances. I couldn't breathe. The betrayal I had felt on my award night was nothing compared to this. This wasn't just neglect. This was deliberate. This was intentional. My father hadn't just ignored me. He had made sure I would never rise above the role they had cast me in. And for what? Because I wasn't the golden child. Because I didn't shine as bright. I shoved the papers back into the folder, my hands shaking. And then I noticed a smaller envelope tucked in the back of the cabinet. My name, again, written in my father's handwriting. Inside was a will, an old draft, my father's, and according to it, I wasn't in it. I dropped the papers, my entire body going cold. My siblings had been written in. My mother, of course. But me? Nothing, as if I didn't exist, as if I wasn't even his daughter. The anger that surged through me then was unlike anything I'd ever felt. I stuffed the envelope into my bag. For the first time in my life, I had proof. Proof that my invisibility wasn't in my head. Proof that they had chosen to erase me, long before I'd even had the chance to shine. That night, I sat in my apartment staring at the will, the scholarship papers, the accounts. The truth was in my hands now, and I knew exactly what I had to do. If they thought they could erase me, if they thought they could live their perfect lives, while I faded into nothing, they were about to learn otherwise. Because this time, I wasn't going to beg for their attention. I was going to make them regret ever ignoring me. The first step was information. I spent days combing through the documents, piecing together the puzzle. My father had been moving money, lots of it, into secret accounts under my brother's name, my sister's, even my mother's, but nothing for me. And the worst part? It wasn't just his salary. There were deposits from other sources, money that shouldn't have been there. I didn't understand all of it, but it smelled wrong. Illegal, maybe. The more I read, the clearer it became. My father wasn't just a strict, dismissive man. He was hiding things. The second step was leverage. I made copies of everything, scanned them, stored them on drives, in the cloud, even mailed a set to myself. If they ever tried to corner me, I'd have evidence. And the third step? Revenge. But revenge needed timing. Revenge needed patience. So I waited. And then the opportunity came. My father's company was hosting a gala, a huge event. Everyone important in his life would be there, including my siblings, my mother. They were all invited, but not me. I found out because Amelia posted about it on her social media, bragging about her new dress, about how she'd been networking with real people. The sting was sharp, but by then, I was past being hurt. I was planning. I knew that if I walked into that gala, uninvited, they'd try to humiliate me. They'd laugh, dismiss me again. But what if instead, I walked in with the truth? What if I walked in, holding the very thing they had tried to keep from me? The key had unlocked more than a cabinet. It had unlocked a war, and I was ready to fight. That week, I put my plan into motion. I reached out to someone I hadn't spoken to in years. My uncle, my father's estranged brother. He had always been the black sheep, the one my father hated, the one no one in the family talked about. But I remembered him being kind to me when I was little. When I showed him the papers, his eyes widened. "Do you know what this is?" he whispered, flipping through the documents. "This could ruin him." "I know," I said. He looked at me for a long time before nodding. "Then let's make sure it does, together." We started pulling strings. I had no idea then how deep the secrets went, how much more the key would reveal, or how dangerous the game I had just entered really was. But one thing was clear. The family who ignored me on my award night had made the biggest mistake of their lives, because they had left me with nothing to lose, and a woman with nothing to lose is the most dangerous weapon of all. The documents burned in my mind every night, like glowing coals I couldn't put out. The will that erased me, the scholarship rejections that weren't mine, the money trails, shifting from one account to another, like snakes slithering in the dark. Every time I looked at them, I saw my father's smirk, my mother's absent nod, my brother's arrogance, my sister's shallow laugh, and I swore, over and over, that when I was finished, none of them would ever laugh at me again. But revenge couldn't be wild. It had to be cold. It had to be deliberate. So I built my plan in 3 layers. First, I needed to plant doubt. The cracks in my family's image had to start from within, not from me screaming on the outside. They had ignored me for years. If I came at them openly, they'd dismiss me like always. But if the truth crept into their lives quietly, like poison seeping into water, they'd never see it coming. Second, I had to collect allies. No war is won alone. My uncle was one, but I needed more people who had reasons to despise my father. Third, I had to choose the moment. A single strike that couldn't be ignored, in front of the right audience, where their reputations mattered most. The gala would be perfect, but first, I had to prepare the battlefield. Planting doubt it started with Amelia. My sister thrived on appearances. She was obsessed with her image, her friends, her reputation, her social media. If something threatened to crack her perfect facade, she'd spiral. So I sent her a message, anonymous, from a burner account I set up. Do you know why your father favors you? Do you know what he hides for you? Check his cabinet. The truth is in there. I knew curiosity would eat at her. And sure enough, 2 days later, she stormed into my apartment without warning, her face pale. Did you do this? She demanded, slamming a printed screenshot of the message onto my table. I raised an eyebrow, forcing calm into my voice. What are you talking about? She paced the room, muttering. I checked the cabinet. I saw my folder. The money. The accounts. What is all of this, Clara? I let silence hang in the air, watching her unravel. Finally, I said, maybe it's time you started asking Dad the questions he never wanted you to ask. Her eyes narrowed. She wanted to accuse me, to pin this on me. But the doubt was already planted. I could see it in her trembling hands. She left without another word. One down, collecting allies next, was Daniel, my brother, the golden boy. He was my father's pride, the heir to everything. But I knew something he didn't. Buried in those files were transactions that proved my father had been moving money under Daniel's name. Money Daniel never saw. I met him at his office, pretending I wanted to reconnect. At first, he brushed me off. Too busy, too important. But then I slid a folder across his desk, photocopies of the documents with his name on them. He froze. What the hell is this? Your name, your accounts, Dad's money. This isn't mine. I know, I said softly, but the government won't care if it is or not. If these accounts ever come under investigation, it'll be your name they burn first, not his. His face drained of color. You're lying. I leaned closer. Am I? Call the bank, check the balances yourself, see where the money goes, and then ask yourself why Dad never told you. I left him sitting there, sweating, his perfect image cracking in the fluorescent light. 2 down. My mother. My mother was harder. She lived in denial, in a world where loyalty to my father was more important than truth. But I didn't need her to side with me. I just needed her to hesitate, so I mailed her an envelope. Inside were copies of the old will with my name missing. No note, no explanation, just the cold, brutal truth. When she called me days later, her voice was shaking. Clara, why would he? Now you see, I whispered, and hung up. 3 down. The uncle's role. Meanwhile, my uncle was working his side of the plan. He reached out to contacts he still had. Old business partners my father had cheated. Neighbors who'd been wronged. Employees who'd been fired unfairly. Quietly, carefully, he gathered statements, little pieces of evidence. Nothing earth-shattering yet, but enough to weave a story. He told me, your father has enemies, Clara. They've been waiting for someone to light the match. You just gave them the fire, choosing the moment, and then came the gala, the perfect stage. I bought a dress, sleek, black, elegant, the kind of dress no one could ignore, the kind of dress that said, I belong here. I wasn't invited, but that didn't matter. With the right confidence, you don't need an invitation. You walk in, and the world believes you're meant to be there. The night of the gala, I slipped into the venue. The chandeliers sparkled above. Music floated through the air, and laughter echoed across the hall. My family was there, dressed to perfection, basking in the glow of wealth and power. They didn't see me at first. I stood in the corner, watching them. My father shaking hands, my brother schmoozing with executives, my sister posing for photos, my mother smiling like everything was fine. The sight made my stomach twist. But then I remembered the folders, the will, the accounts, and I smiled, because tonight everything was about to change. I waited until the speeches began, until the room was quiet, all eyes on the stage where my father was giving his annual address. He was in his element, booming voice, confident smile, the picture of success, and that's when I stepped forward. I walked to the front, my heels clicking on the marble floor. People turned, murmurs spreading like wildfire. My father's voice faltered when he saw me. "Clara," he said, confusion flashing across his face. I stopped at the edge of the stage, looking up at him. My voice was steady, louder than I expected. "You forgot to invite me, Dad." Again, the audience gasped. Cameras turned. My siblings froze. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. And then, slowly, I pulled a folder from my bag. "This," I said, holding it up, "is the truth you've been hiding from everyone. The lies, the stolen opportunities, the accounts in other people's names. The will where you erased me like I was never your daughter." Gasps rippled through the crowd. My father's face turned red. "Clara, that's enough." "No," I snapped. "I've been quiet my whole life. You ignored me when I achieved something worth celebrating. You erased me from your legacy. But tonight, everyone gets to see who you really are." I opened the folder and read from the documents. Dates, transfers, letters. People started recording on their phones. My brother's face went pale. My sister burst into tears. My mother just stared at my father, her world crumbling. The room exploded into whispers, into chaos, and I stood there, calm, steady, the invisible daughter finally holding the spotlight. This was just the beginning. The scandal would spread. The documents would leak. My father's empire would tremble, and for the first time in my life, my family couldn't ignore me, because I was the one who held the key, and I was done being silent. The room erupted like a fire alarm. People stood, phones up, whispers sparking into arguments, a few laughs from the kind who laugh when they're afraid. I didn't move. I held the folder steady, as if it were a lantern, and I was leading us all out of a cave. Security hesitated. This wasn't a bar fight or a drunk guest. This was the host's daughter, holding the kind of truth that stains tuxedos. The MC panicked into the mic. The band stumbled into silence. And my father descended the steps with a smile that had been practiced in a mirror. Up close, the smile cracked. He said my name the way you say a word you want to own. "Clara." I took one step back so he had to choose between approaching and turning. He wasn't used to choices he didn't script. "You erased me," I said softly, and I watched him flinch because soft is sometimes worse than loud. My mother stood now, both hands on her pearls, like she could strangle the night back into order. Daniel's jaw twitched. Amelia's mascara made small black rivers under her eyes. My father reached for the mic, but I didn't give it up. I kept it at my mouth and did what no one had ever let me do in this family. I finished my sentence. "Tonight," I said, "I'm returning the favor. I'm erasing the story you told about yourself." I laid the copies on the podium. Transfers with dates, account numbers that matched the ones in Daniel's name. The old will with my name missing like a tooth. I didn't need to scream. Paper does the screaming if you let it. "Ladies and gentlemen," my father boomed finely, stealing a mic from a stand like a man grabbing a life preserver. "My daughter is unwell. It would have worked any other year." The room would have dutifully nodded. The staff would have ushered me out while the band struck up a forgiving jazz standard. But tonight, phones were filming, and truth was faster than manners. And then, blessed timing, my uncle stepped forward from the crowd, holding a small manila envelope and a look I'd never seen on him before. Not spite, relief. He announced himself in a voice that cut through the chatter like a clean blade. "I'm Harold Whitaker, the host's brother. I can corroborate those records. I warned him a decade ago that laundering funds through family names would end badly." A sound moved through the room that wasn't quite a gasp. It was the sound an audience makes when it realizes the twist is real. My father's smile died so slowly, you could point to the moment and say, "There." "Security," he said. But security just stared at him the way people stare when their paycheck and their conscience are at war. "Call the police," someone whispered. Not to me, to the ether, to whatever invisible authority hovers above a gala. When the lighting design can't fix the plot, I didn't wait for the next act. I came here to light the fuse, not to stand in the smoke. I left the copies where they could be found, slid the originals back into my bag, and walked off the stage. People parted like I wore a crown. I did not run. I did not shake. I had been shaking my whole life. I was finished. Out in the cool night, the air felt like a clean shirt. I swallowed the kind of sob that isn't sadness anymore. It's release. I was halfway down the steps when heels clattered behind me. "Amelia." "Clara, wait," she said, breathless. "Did you send me that message?" I didn't pretend. "Yes." Her shoulders slumped. "I wanted to hate you for it." She swallowed. "I can't. You don't have to love me tonight," I said. "You just have to stop loving the lie." She nodded like it hurt. "He'll say it's your fault. He'll say you ruined us." "He ruined us," I said. I just turned on the lights. A black sedan pulled to the curb. My uncle rolled down the window. "Get in," he said. "We have appointments at dawn." We went to a diner with red vinyl booths and a waitress who did not care who we were. I set the originals on the sticky table between the coffee cups. My uncle made calls. Names I didn't recognize. People who did recognize him. He said words like audit and complaint and deposition. He said them calmly. He had spent years learning the law that had once been used to beat him. Tonight he used it like a scalpel. By sunrise, we had 3 next steps. A meeting with a financial crimes investigator he trusted to be clean. A consult with an estate attorney who specialized in contested wills. And a journalist from a paper my father couldn't buy, who had been waiting for a reason to care. Before I slept, I sent a single email to myself, with every file attached again and the words, "If anything happens to me, this goes everywhere." I copied the journalist, my uncle, 2 professors who had believed me when no one did, and myself at 3 different addresses. Insurance doesn't stop fire. It reminds arsonists how much smoke stings. The investigator's office was unremarkable. Beige walls. A plant that was either thriving or plastic. The woman who met us introduced herself as Ruiz and looked at me the way you look at someone who just lifted a car off their own leg. She flipped through the pages and nodded before the nod was finished. "We'll need the originals," she said. "We'll need chain of custody statements. We'll need to move before your father moves his money again. He'll say it's a misunderstanding," I said. "They always do," she said, without contempt. Crimes are built on misunderstandings that pay rent. The estate attorney was different. Older, silk tie, patient eyes. He took one look at the will and asked for dates. I gave them to him from memory, because sleep deprivation frees room, where fear used to live. He steepled his fingers and exhaled through his nose. "Your father can write any will he wants," he said. "But fraud is a different matter." And he tapped the letter where my father had signed my name to decline a scholarship. "This," he said, "isn't a will issue. It's a pattern. Patterns convince judges when tears don't." By noon, my phone looked like fireworks. Messages from my mother. "Call me now." From Daniel. "What the hell have you done?" From numbers I didn't know. Comment. No comment. Is it true? I turned the phone face down and watched condensation slide down a glass of water. Sometimes power is not answering. The journalist met us in a park, notebook in hand, hair in a knot that said she was too busy being excellent to perform it. She let me talk for a long time without interrupting. That is a gift. When I finished, she closed her notebook and said, "On the record?" "On the record," I said. "Everything except passwords. I want this documented, not sensationalized." "Don't worry," she said. "Boring. Verifiable truth is the most scandalous thing I know. We didn't hide. That was part of the revenge. We walked forward, visible, with paperwork and witnesses. We filed what needed filing. We gave copies to people who stamp copies for a living. We let the machine eat. The machine ate. 2 days later, the headline landed. Prominent executive under investigation for alleged financial misconduct. Family names used in shell accounts. It wasn't my name in the title, and that was perfect. Inside, there were quotes from a family source. Documents blurred, but legible enough to scare investors. My uncle on the record saying the thing he'd been waiting 20 years to say. He thought no one would ever check. My phone filled again. I didn't pick up until an unknown number left a message that was just breathing, and then my mother's voice, small for the first time in my memory. "Clara," she said, "please, come home." Home was a house with cabinets that locked and a study that smelled like old cologne and broken promises. I went anyway. You can visit a battlefield, as long as you remember it is not a museum. My mother opened the door like a child, expecting thunder. She looked different, not older, not younger, unarmored. "I didn't know," she whispered. "You didn't ask," I said. Not cruel, just correct. We stood in the foyer with the mirror that had always made me feel like a ghost. She gestured toward the kitchen. "Tea? Water," I said. "No sugar." We sat. She cried once, dabbed her eyes, and then looked at me over the rim of the glass. "What happens now?" "Investigations," I said. "Audits, hearings. He'll hire men with suits. They'll say I'm dramatic. Paper will say they're wrong." I swallowed. "You will be questioned. You should tell the truth. She started, then swallowed it back. "I will. Where is he?" I asked. "At the office," she said. "Or with his lawyers." "He hasn't slept." She hesitated. "He asked about you." I didn't smile. "Of course he did. He imagines winning me back is the same as winning his narrative back." "He asked if you were safe," she added, "like it might be a bomb." "I am," I said, "because I was." Safety is a spine. Daniel arrived in a rush of cologne and indignation. He stared at me like a mirror had surprised him. "They're freezing accounts," he said without hello. The bank called me. "Do you have any idea?" "Yes," I said. "I have an excellent idea." "You could have come to me," he snapped. "We could have handled this privately." "Privately is how we got here," I said. "Private is your favorite magic trick." He ran a hand through his hair, the way men do when they want sympathy for a mess they made. "You're going to destroy us." "No," I said. He did. "I'm rebuilding me." Amelia came late, red-eyed, shoulders rounded like she'd been carrying something heavy she couldn't name. She didn't yell. She sat beside me and laced her fingers together tight. "What do you need from me?" She whispered. "Truth," I said. "Every time they ask." "I can do that," she said, and I believed her because she didn't try to do more. We did not hug. This wasn't forgiveness. This was architecture. The first official meeting where people wore badges and used words like perjury and compliance smelled like toner and anxiety. My father sat across a table with counsel on either side, like parentheses. He did not look at me. That was new. He looked at Ruiz, who shuffled a stack of copies like cards she enjoyed dealing. She asked questions that sounded like arithmetic and felt like confession. When she asked him to explain a transfer labeled consultancy that led directly to an account with my brother's name, he tried a story. Stories wilt under fluorescent lights. "I believed," he said finally, "that it would be best for the family." "For which member?" Ruiz asked. He didn't answer. The recorder on the table made a soft whirring sound, like applause. Outside in the hall, I leaned against a wall while my uncle texted updates to people I'd never meet who nevertheless mattered. Amelia slid down the wall to sit beside me, her dress unsuited to the floor and not caring. "He's terrified," she said. "I'm not," I replied, surprised to find it true. I was many things, tired, raw, alert, but not afraid. It's astonishing how fear evaporates when you pick your side and stop auditioning for the other one. Then came the will. The estate attorney filed to compel production of the most recent version. The one in the cabinet was old, but it was a map to a destination. My disappearance from the page. When the current will surfaced, it was worse. The language had been oiled to sound generous. College funds, trusts for future grandchildren, charitable bequests, with plaques and dinners. And me. A single line that wasn't even a sentence. My daughter Clara, having chosen an independent path, is not provided for in this instrument. Chosen. I laughed when I read it. A small unpretty bark that turned heads. Do you want to contest? The attorney asked, on grounds of undue influence, malice, or fraud. Yes, I said, on grounds of math, on grounds of arithmetic, that adds to a pattern. We attach the scholarship letters, the forged refusals. The accounts waved like magic wands over Daniel's name. We attached my transcripts, not because merit should buy love, but because the story mattered. And the story was that I had been excellent in a house that paid for less. We attached a statement I wrote at 2 a.m. that said, in essence, I am not invisible, and I will not be made so on paper or in kitchens. Time did what it does, stretched and collapsed and surprised. While investigators did their counting, my life got smaller and better. I kept the early shift at the library where I was finishing my graduate work. I taught a study group that met on Tuesdays and promised each other to stay. I started taking morning walks without checking my phone because the worst had already happened and I had survived it. The award on my desk no longer glared. It glowed. I talked to a therapist who did not try to repair my family inside my head, but helped me build a room for myself there, with a lock only I could open. And the key? I carried it still. Its weight now a comfort, more than a dare. I kept it on my desk, beside a plant I hadn't killed yet. I didn't wonder who had tucked it into my bouquet until a letter arrived in a blue envelope, addressed in handwriting I knew without knowing. My grandmother's. She had died the year I graduated high school. Inside, a note on thin paper. Clara, if this finds you, it means I didn't get to say this in person. Keys matter, not just the metal kind. I asked the florist to tuck this into your first big bouquet, whatever it turned out to be, because I suspected you would have to open the cabinet yourself. Your father learned money from men who didn't deserve their lessons. You learned love from books and sunlight. Take what's yours, then make something kinder out of it, love. Gran, I cried the way children cry when a grown-up finally tells them the truth. Then I laughed because of the audacity of a dead woman commissioning floral espionage. I put the letter in the folder with my list of beginnings and felt something click into place that wasn't a lock. It was me. When the consequences finally landed, they did not make a sound. They arrived as certified letters and court dates and a resignation to spend more time with family, which made me choke on my coffee. The board accepted it. The company issued a statement about financial irregularities under review. Investors pretended to be shocked. My father pretended not to be. The DA did not pretend at all. In the mediation for the will challenge, my father's attorney tried the language of peace. This has been hard on everyone. Perhaps we can settle. Settlements are not surrender. But sometimes they are a tool, and I had learned how to use tools. I let them speak numbers, as if numbers could end a story. Then I laid down my conditions like cards. I want my scholarship funds restored, with interest, into an education foundation in my name, administered by a third party, audited annually, for students who got told no for the wrong reasons. I want my grandmother's house, which he's been renting as an investment, transferred to me outright. It was hers, and she would have given it to me if she'd been allowed. I want my mother's independent counsel, paid by his assets, not hers. And I want a signed statement acknowledging that he declined offers on my behalf without my consent. The lawyer sputtered. My father stared. My mother, sitting 2 chairs down with her new attorney, closed her eyes. Daniel looked like math was failing him. Amelia looked like church. Impossible, his lawyer said. Documented, I replied, and slid the letters forward. Or we go through discovery and count in public. Silence is a negotiation tactic. I let it stretch until it thinned. My father cleared his throat. The house, he began. My grandmother's, I said. Her handwriting says hello. He did not smile. He did not look at me. He looked at the wall and nodded once. A man learning the shape of defeat. We signed. Not because money fixes betrayal, but because money had been the weapon used against me, and I had learned to disarm it and hand it back as something useful. The Foundation's first scholarship ceremony happened the next spring in a gym that smelled like wax floors and hope. Students hugged their mothers and fathers and friends. I gave a speech that did not mention my family once. I said, when the people who were supposed to clap for you stay home, clap for yourself so loud the walls learn your name. The applause hurt my hands in the best way. As for my father, the charges worked their way through the system, the way cold works its way through bones. He made deals where deals could be made. He paid fines that looked large in headlines and small to the people who had needed that money when it was still money. He did not go to prison for long. He did lose the job he believed was a personality trait. He did lose the certainty that rooms would conspire to love him. My mother divorced him the week after the settlement. Quietly, in a courthouse where no one wore pearls, she sent me a text with a picture of her hand empty of rings and the words, "Tea?" We meet every other Sunday and talk about weather, long enough to be honest about other things. She is learning how to apologize without explaining herself. I am learning how to accept without building a monument to it. Daniel moved to a smaller apartment and learned to use a calendar that did not assume the universe would adjust. He texted me once. I didn't know. I replied, now you do. He said, I'm trying. I said, good. He sends me stupid memes sometimes. I send him recipes for things that feed more people than just him. Amelia started working at a non-profit that helps women find work after people take their time and names. The first time she called to tell me she'd found a woman a suit for an interview, she cried and then laughed at herself for crying. I'm proud of you, I said, and she cried more. I moved into my grandmother's house. The key turned in that lock like it had been waiting. I painted the study a color that did not exist anywhere in my father's world. I filled the shelves with books and the windows with plants that did not know failure. I put the award on a small table by the sun because it finally looked like a promise again. On the mantle, I placed the key and the letter and a picture of me not being invisible. When people ask me now about revenge, I tell them this. It is not the fireworks. It is the blueprint. It is the invoice. It is the audit log. It is the foundation you name after the girl they tried to forget. It is your own voice, reading your own story into a microphone no one can wrestle from your hand. It is understanding that some doors open because you kicked them, and some open because you found the right key and learned how to turn it without apology. On the anniversary of the award night, I dressed in the same simple black dress and walked past the auditorium on my way to class. Students were taking pictures on the steps, cheeks flushed with the kind of happiness that doesn't check its phone. I sat on the low wall, breathing in the autumn that smelled like pencils and new starts. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. I opened it, ready to ignore. It was a photo of a key on a palm. The caption read, "Found this in my grandma's sewing box with a note to me. For when you're ready, I think I am. I don't know where to start." I typed back, "Start by making copies. Then open what's yours. Then build something no one can take." I put my phone away and watched the light shift on the brick. I was not waiting to be chosen. I was not waiting to be seen. I was not waiting. I walked home to the house with the study that smelled like fresh paint and pages, turned the key that had started everything, and stepped into a life I had let myself design. And for the first time since I was a child, tracing the outlines of futures in library margins, I felt it completely. Not triumph, not gloating, not even relief, power. Quiet, steady, honest power. They skipped my award night. They missed the backup ceremony too, the one where I stood alone in my kitchen, raised a glass of water to my own reflection, and said out loud, "You did this." And if my father ever tells the story of the night his daughter destroyed him, I hope he remembers the detail that matters most. I didn't destroy him. I simply turned the key.